Welcome to the Beyond the Bucket Show, a podcast centered around optimizing all life's buckets. We all have buckets we are balancing: coaching, entrepreneurial ventures, family, passion projects, and health. Let's all take this journey together and become bucket fillers. And here's your host, Chris McSwain.
Welcome back, everybody. I am ecstatic to have our guest today, Coach Patrick Judge. Patrick is the head boys basketball coach at Saratoga High School. He is also the vice president, managing officer for the Intero Real Estate Group. He has balanced being a businessman and a basketball coach for over 22 years. We discuss Patrick's enthusiasm for these two areas of his life and how he approaches them in a similar way to find success. His infectious personality has allowed him to be the number one in sales from 2004 to 2016 at Passport Unlimited, and also the Central Coast Section Coach of the Year in 2011. Let's get right into how Pat manages and thrives with all the buckets he has in his life. Coach Patrick Judge, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm excited to be here. Been pumped about it all day, so looking forward to it.
Well, great. Let's get right into it because that's what I initially wanted to talk to you about is just your energy and your enthusiasm. I just think every part of your life, you exude that, and it also shows in the teams that you coach. Tell me a little bit about that energy and that passion that you have.
You know, it's crazy. You know, I think someone told me not too long ago, it's like when God was handing out cups of different attributes, right? God just for whatever reason added an extra cup of an energy into my life, and you know, I think it stems back. You know, my 95-year-old granny just passed away a couple of weeks ago, and as we were celebrating her life, you know, one of the things that really came about that celebration was, you know, just the level of confidence and positivity that she instilled in my mom, and that's transferred over. And my mom's done that same thing with myself and my brother. And I'm just, you know, people sometimes ask me, like, is it fake? Is it? And the answer is no. I mean, I'm just fired up, you know, pretty much all the time. And I'm incredibly blessed. You know, and again, you know, I love life. I've surrounded my people with very similar, you know, excitement and energy. And I just feed off of it. And you know, and one of the things and reason why I was so excited to just come and hang out with you for a little bit and talk hoops is because that's what my passion is coaching basketball, giving back to the community, to the kids that I coach. And so, I mean, it's no joke when I say I woke up this morning and I've been fired up about this opportunity all day. So.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you bring that passion and energy to your teams. And it seems that they're able to feed off that and play that same way.
You know, it's really interesting. And you know, I'd like to think that you're right because, you know, there are times, and again, I mean, like all of us, I mean, there are going to be times where we're not as fired up for whatever reason. We had a long day. We're tired. Maybe we're not feeling that great. And, you know, and I will definitely say that those are the worst practices. Those are the worst games when I'm not at my best. And so, you know, the thing that I always challenge myself is no matter what, whether I'm walking into practice at 7:00, whether I'm walking into a game, I've got to be the best and I've got to be fired up. And whatever that means, if I've got to drink a Red Bull, you know, before a game, to get me, whatever that means to get me fired up, I've got to be that for my team because, yeah, they definitely do feed off my energy, and I feed off theirs. You know, I mean, that's something that one of my joys about coaching high school kids is they have a ton of energy. You know, I mean, for the most part, they're fired up, and again, we work off each other, and so we truly are a team in that regard. And then I also have a bunch of young coaches. You know, I'm an old man now at 45, but you know, I've got a bunch of young coaches and I'm able to feed off their energy as well. And so again, I mean, you know, one of the things that I love about being a head coach and being a part of a team is that we all feed off each other. And so yeah, it's just something, again, that God's blessed me with, and I'm incredibly thankful for. And I'm incredibly thankful that I can use that energy to inspire others. So
Definitely. You touched briefly on your upbringing a little bit.
Yeah.
Your parents were both teachers. And tell me a little bit about how you were raised and how that's kind of influenced the person you are today and the way you approach, not only your career, but also your coaching career as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, incredibly blessed. My parents, have been together a very long time. In fact, they're going to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary here in July.
Wow.
And so, just incredibly blessed for who they are and the man that they developed and developed me into being. And again, I mean, it was always incredibly positive. I think this year they missed a game. And it was, I think, one of 5 games in my entire playing and coaching career that they've missed. And so it's unbelievable. And I mean, again, when I say I'm blessed, I mean, I truly am. And what they instilled in me at a very young age was, again, that level of positivity, that level of confidence. I mean, they were constantly encouraging me. And so many of the life lessons that they've taught me, now I'm able to pass that on to others. And my mom is a longtime mentor, teacher and coach. There were so many little things. I mean, we were just talking about it today, as a matter of fact, on our leadership call. It's amazing to me, whether they're kids or adults. One of the lessons my mom taught me is when you recognize one person, everybody wants recognition and they'll all fall into line.
Sure.
And so, again, all those little tips and tricks that, my parents taught me and instilled in me, the support level that they gave me. And again, I mean, it's truly molded the man that I am. And I'm, again, incredibly, I'll probably say this a lot during this time, but, I'm incredibly blessed for that relationship and who my parents have been to me. But yeah, the teacher part of it is really unique too, because, coming from 2 teachers, people used to always ask me, well, do you want to be a teacher too? And I used to always say, I want to be a teacher, but I also want to make money.
Sure.
And so, again, I have the highest regard and respect for the teaching profession. But, I wanted to make money, to be able to really live the lifestyle that I wanted, but also then to be able to teach and give back as well. And so I entered a career in sales that was flexible, that allowed me to do that, make some good money, but also have the freedom, the flexibility to be able to give back and still coach. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I definitely want to touch base on your career, because I think just being a basketball coach is one of the buckets that you try to fill, but your career is also extremely important to you. And like you mentioned, teachers don't make this type of salaries that you can make within the sales industry. And I definitely want to see how you, couple those 2 things together. But I do want to start with, your coaching career and your background, because you started coaching basketball at 18 years old. Like you just mentioned, you're 45 years old now, and you started coaching me when you were 24 years old as a club coach. So talk to me about your coaching journey early on.
So it's a pretty crazy story. So I graduated at Valley Christian High School when I was 17. I was a pretty good basketball player, and I thought, I want to keep going on this basketball journey. I had a pretty darn good senior year, and ended very, very strongly. We ended up losing right at the buzzer in the CCS semifinal game, and it was all motivating to me, kind of that last journey of my playing career.
Mm-hmm.
Go to West Valley again. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't want to take out big student loans, and so I thought, I'm going to go to West Valley, and maybe this is going to give me an opportunity to continue my basketball career. West Valley the year before had, I believe, just finished in the Final Four of the state junior college tournament.
Right.
Incredibly phenomenal basketball program. I mean, they were just churning out, Division I, Division II athletes. And here's this skinny kid walking in the intramurals, and actually I took a PE class because I thought if I could come and ball out in PE, and the PE coach was also the head men's basketball coach, a man named Bob Burton, who's one of my longtime, mentors, and showed up, thought I was playing pretty well, got up the confidence right around, like the third or fourth week of PE class, to go up and ask him and say, hey, coach, would you mind if I have an opportunity to try out?
Yep.
And Bob Burton, God love him, he said, Pat, I love you. He said, your organization, he was actually having me set the games up and run the games and do all that. And he goes, your organization is off the chart. Your energy, your enthusiasm, I love it. And he goes, but you're just too small to play for us. Wow. And again, I was, at that time, I've grown a little bit this way and this way, but at that time I was, 5'11", 150 pounds soaking wet. And he said, you're just too small. And I took it as, all right. And I said, well, I was kind of dejected there for a minute. And he goes, you know what? But he goes, everything about you screams basketball coach. And he goes, have you thought about coaching? And I said, well, no. And he goes, you should really think about it because I think you'd be a phenomenal coach. And so an opportunity like the next week opened up at Valley Christian Junior High. They needed a 6th grade basketball coach. And I applied, I got the job, had the greatest group of kids. We ended up going 12-0 my first year of coaching, and I had the bug. And from that point on, I made a commitment that, I love it. I get to impact kids. And again, it's been a passion of mine, ever since. So, I started coaching at Valley Christian Junior High. I coached the 6th grade. I coached the 8th grade boys twice. I think in those 3 years, we lost a total of 4 games.
Wow.
Followed those kids up and played freshman basketball at Valley Christian High School. Followed those boys up again. Coached them on the JV team. And then through that, I recognized that there was a need, because again, I'm an all-in guy, and I felt like the season was too short. I wanted to hang out with these kids. I mean, we're having a great time. We're winning basketball games. These kids are continuing to get better. Is there something? And I started following AAU basketball that was really predominantly heavy down in Southern California, East Coast, and then also the Oakland Soldiers and a couple of big name AAU teams. But we really didn't have one locally that kind of fit the needs of what we were looking for. Is we wanted to be grassroots. We wanted it. We didn't want to be the big name program. We really wanted to have an impact on local kids. Sure. And so founded an AAU program. Back then it was called Intensity Basketball, and started that, and then had an opportunity to coach a great group of young men. You were a part of that. Had one of the best 16 and under basketball teams around, and you and a bunch of your friends were a part of that. And again, just everything, just kept that bug and that fire going. And that's kind of how my career, my career, coaching career started. So
sure. Well, that's a great story, and just goes to show all the passion and desire and wanting to be around and give back just transcended through coaching, and then you were able to get that bug, like you said. So I just think that's a great story. Talk to me about the club coaching days back in, the early 2000s. We see the club level now, and obviously I own a club basketball program or the president of one, and it's just the landscape has completely changed. It's so big, it's so massive, there's so many teams. What was it like back in those early days?
How can I say this and be, kind of politically correct in the landscape of today? I feel like back in the day, it was more genuine, and this is, I know this isn't a plug for Top Flight Elite and what you're doing, but obviously I'm a huge supporter of you and, the coaches that you have in your program. But that's one of the special things that I think you've done a very good job of with Top Flight is keeping it genuine, keeping it grassroots based. but back in the day, I mean, it really truly was, and I know it's cliche, but it really felt as though it was, more about the kids and not as much about, who's got the shoe deal and who's going D1 and, all of the things that are now involved in the AAU landscape of today.
Sure.
I mean, and I feel like, again, today, there wasn't as much of the, well, I coached my kids' NJV team, so now I'm going to form an AAU team.
Right.
Back then there were a lot of really good coaches that were using their passion to continue the season and continue that love of the game and continue to work with the kids. So, obviously, I mean, again, I think it's grown a lot. I think the one positive that it does do is it gives kids an opportunity to continue to play.
Sure.
But back then it just felt more authentic, if you will. And again, less programs, which also made it more fun because you got to have these big programs like a Top Flight Elite, right? That were truly grassroots. I mean, at that time, at like 19, 20, 21, 22, I was coaching 3 teams, and you could go to an AAU tournament and there might be, a total of 24 teams in 3 or 4 divisions, so you could go and you could show up a Saturday morning. I remember going to Rumble in the Bay with Nelson Washington, going to Independence High School and coaching all day. And, I mean, for a basketball junkie, it's like, let's go. I mean, you show up at 9 and you play till 6 or 7 and you've got 3 teams. And so, again, I mean, a lot has changed. But the skill development that I see, from the good AAU programs is incredible. I'm amazed at the level of basketball player that now is being produced because, again, of the true AAU programs that are doing it for the right reasons for the kids. It's amazing to see these kids and the character, the skill, the things that I think are most important to me that still are coming out. So, yeah, I mean, again, that's kind of, kind of a take on old school, new school. But again, I think that coaches, if they're doing it for the right reasons, and I know a lot of them are, you really get to see the character that's built from those kids as they come out of those AAU programs back into their high school or move on to college. So
definitely, I agree with you 100%. So Valley Christian JV basketball coach. Once you were there for how many years now?
So let's see. So I coached at Valley for 7 years. So yeah.
And then you decided to make a pivot and focus on your entrepreneurial ventures, correct?
I did. I was, I was given an opportunity to almost start my own business. There was a company out of Washington that received a very nice sum of money from Microsoft to build out a Microsoft employee program here in the Bay Area. I had a relationship with them through a startup that I worked for, and they ended up hiring me. And so I had an opportunity to basically build Northern California by myself. Wow. And again, I mean, so many lessons translate back and forth. I mean, the lessons in sales translate to coaching and vice versa. And so, that fire, that enthusiasm, that passion I took from coaching, and I just pulled it right over into selling. In fact, that's how I started getting the majority of my first clients, was just going to the gym and in the middle of the day, playing pickup basketball and picking up clients and, and building those relationships. And so I took 5 years off to build Passport, which is the name of the company, built Northern California into the #1 region in the country, which is pretty awesome. I mean, when I say the country, I mean the West Coast. Yeah. We're a small company. But 5 years go by, and my mom suckered me, and I use suckered me in the nicest way possible, but Mama Judge had a bunch of kids that she had taught that were now in high school, that went to actually a couple of kids from Branham, I think a kid from Lee, and the Branham-Lee rivalry was a big rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom said, you know what, let's go watch a basketball game. I want to go watch some of these kids who I taught. And I said, I hadn't been to a high school basketball game in 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I had, I knew that if I would go, that I would want to get back into it. And I knew I couldn't at that time. I couldn't invest everything I wanted to. So we go, and sure enough, I'm sitting in the stands, and I just was like, I've got to get back on the sideline. And so Mom suckered me into it, and praise the Lord, she did. And the coaching job, a JV coaching job at Santa Teresa High School opened up, and I applied. And the question that I still remember this day, Mitch Priest, a good friend of mine, longtime varsity basketball coach at Santa Teresa, in the interview said, my son is going to be coming to play for Santa Teresa in the next year. Why would I want him to play for you? And I remember that to this day. And I said, number one is because I'm going to love your son like he's my own. And that's something that I've always tried to carry over into every kid is loving them like they were my own kid, like I was their big uncle, old uncle. Ended up getting the job, ended up coaching Mitch's son, ended up having a great time and great coaching career at Santa Teresa. 3 years into that, the Lee opportunity opens up. I apply. I believe I was one of about 10 to 12 candidates, and young AD at the time, great guy, Chris Perry, and I think I had him. I think both of us were like ready to jump out of our seats after my interview. I came with an entire plan about how we were going to build a program, and again, I mean, that energy level, that fire inside me, that he loved it, and got a call 2 days later saying, Pat, you're our guy. And so again, sorry to kind of ramble on, but yeah, it went from 5-year break, Mama Judge suckering me into going to Branham, the Lee rivalry game, to me needing to get back into it. And then again, it just kind of stacked. It went Santa Teresa, translated great into Lee. And then I'm sure we'll talk more about my career at Lee here in a little bit. So
definitely. So early on, after that 5-year break, what was it like getting back onto the court? Now, you weren't the varsity coach, so your responsibilities weren't the same, but
right.
That transition from working with Passport and now also coaching, you
Yep.
had a little bit of a buffer because you were able to spend 5 years trying to build that business. But
Yep.
what's it like when you combine those two worlds, or in this case, combine those two buckets?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think, one of the joys of being in sales is that flexibility, and so, combining, knowing that, again, if I'm going to go into something, I'm going to give it my all. And so, that time, that flexibility, that 5 years that I had to build my business. Now I was able to come in to Santa Teresa, and when I got to Santa Teresa, I was able to put my business aside and really focus on my kids. And so, it was initially, I still remember that first day, and I think I had 35 kids show up, to tryouts at Santa Teresa. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, I haven't done this in a while, and so, but I mean, it's like riding a bike, getting back on the court, getting back into the swing of things. And again, I had a great group, thankfully, I was blessed with early on to kind of help me, but yeah, I mean, it was an initial, transition period, but, the one thing that I've always told myself is I'm going to give it everything I've got, in my job. And then again, when that job is over, or when I step foot into the gym, I'm going to give everything I've got into coaching my kids. And so I think the two, my job and coaching have always kind of fueled each other's fire. Because again, I mean, I think that I always tell my kids, like, being successful is fun. And so I was experiencing a great amount of success at Passport selling. And so I would walk into the gym every day and it's like, boys, I just closed a $10,000 deal. Let's go. I'm fired up. And so, and they'd be excited for me. And, so again, I think it's just that finding something, finding a job that really fires you up, and then finding that passion that really fires, no matter what we do, I think has really been a blessing. So I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. So was that the way you were able to manage it when you had those little successes on the job, then you could bring that to the court?
Yeah. And vice versa. I mean, there were times when, we all feel this way in our jobs sometimes, where it's like, oh man, I've got to go and do this again, or I've got to make these 10 phone calls, whatever it is. So I would always use that fuel, say we had a great practice, and I'd wake up the next morning and I couldn't wait to get to practice, but I knew that I've got to bring that fuel and that fire to my job so that I can continue to coach, right? Because coaching is not going to pay the bills, it's not going to pay the mortgage. But again, if I can use that fuel from the practice the night before to fuel my fire during the day, then I know that we're going to have another great practice, and vice versa. So
it goes to that saying, do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. And
exactly.
Like, you didn't have to do the Passport business, but it was something that was right in line with the type of person that you were. And it allowed you to do the things that you really love to do, which was coach. So I think
exactly. And I mean, again, I found that, I really found a love in sales. And being in front of people, building relationships. I mean, again, so much of what I think what I do as a coach, it translates back to sales. And again, I mean, I'm not, I'm not the greatest salesman of all time, but again, I know that I'm always going to bring in energy. I'm going to bring in enthusiasm and a fire. And I think that, that my clients, I think that resonates with them. And again, it translates. I mean, a lot of my clients now, will ask me to this day, how's your basketball team? And they want to talk basketball, I mean, and that makes the relationship part of the job, which is such a huge key in sales. It makes it so much easier, so, yeah.
And I think that relational piece is also shown in your coaching as well. I know that you take all of your players, whether it be a small group or individually, out to Chipotle, which is your favorite. You sit down with them and have a meal, or I think you let them choose sometimes, but you just want to spend that time with them. And it goes to show you in the sales aspect, you spend that time, they get to know you as an individual and you get to know them. And then they ask you questions that you're passionate about. I'm sure that the same thing that you're doing. Vice versa. And then as far as basketball is concerned, you're able to do that with your players. So what they like, what they don't really like. And, you ask them if they have a girlfriend and stuff like that. And you get to know them on a more interpersonal level. And that breeds success in both on the court as well as in the business world.
I couldn't agree more. I think you said it great, Chris. I mean, it really, truly, asking questions, understanding, and I remember something, and it touches me that we're doing this. And again, I appreciate this opportunity, but I remember something that you said to me, and this is off the cuff. I mean, you didn't know that we were going to talk about this, but something you said to me that was an incredibly huge compliment is you said how one of your greatest gifts as a coach is taking each individual and treating them as their own person. And that's something you said to me, many years ago that I've always held like near and dear to my heart, is because that is something special. That is a gift that, I believe God's given me is taking each person, whether it's a client, whether it's a relationship that I'm in, whether it's a kid that I'm coaching, and really trying to understand what makes them tick, and not putting them in a box. And not saying, okay, you've got to act this way, right? And so that was a huge compliment. It actually really encouraged me back when you told it to me that, yeah, this is a gift that I have, and I want to further that gift. And so, yeah, you brought up something that's near and dear to my heart as well, is my Chipotle lunches with my kids.
Yeah.
It's something I started. I started doing it back when I was at Santa Teresa, where I would meet every kid for lunch, and we started doing it as just, we'd walk it. I couldn't, kids couldn't drive back then. They were JV kids, so I'd meet them right after school. We'd sit down. We just talk about life, and I'd ask them questions. I'd ask them to do their goal setting, and then as I took over the varsity program at Lee, then the kids could drive, and then we started doing it during before school started, and so we had that dead period in late July, early August, before school was starting. Kids were more relaxed, and we'd meet for lunch. I'd buy them Chipotle, and we'd sit and talk for a half hour, 45 minutes. We talk about goals. I've heard everything from, I want to I have my first girlfriend this year, to, I want to be MVP of the league. I've heard it all. And it's such a special time for me as a coach. I would encourage every coach, young, old, and everywhere in between, to do those types of things. There are so many special moments that I've had. I get to pray for every one of them. And that's something that's special to me. As we sit down to lunch, especially as they're starting their school year, it's most memorable for me when I'm sitting with a senior, and being able to really talk about what that senior's goals are, pray for them as they're getting ready to head into their final, year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's incredibly special. But that's something that I would recommend for every coach to be able to do. And again, you really find out who these kids are and what makes them tick. And then you can go back to that. I'll share a quick story is, I had a kid who played for me. So Niger was one of the better players that I've ever coached.
Yes.
And as a junior, he was a good player, long, athletic, good player, but not a standout. And Son would say the same thing. And so I believe he was honorable mention. And he might not even have been honorable mention in our league as a junior when he was at Lee, and dedicated himself during the summer. And you could see it. You could see a couple of my seniors, incoming seniors during the summer, their bodies during summer league were starting to change. And it wasn't really apparent until he shows up to Chipotle. I hadn't seen him in about 6 weeks. He shows up to Chipotle, and this is a kid that when kids would have their shirts off in the weight room, he was the kid that was wearing a long sleeve. He shows up to Chipotle wearing a tank top, and he was yoked. And this was a 6-week transformation. And I said, so what in the world have you been doing for the last 6 weeks? And he goes, Coach, I'm hitting the gym 6 to 7 days a week. And he goes, I have one goal, and that's to be MVP of the league, right? And this was a kid that, again, barely made honorable mention as a junior, and he's sitting with me at Chipotle in a tank top, showing off his guns, talking about how he wants to be MVP of our league. And I'll be honest with you, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I've told Son this now, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this kid is nuts.
This is not going to happen. Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I love his confidence. And I said, buddy, I love your confidence. I said, it's a huge goal. And he goes, Coach, I'm going to get there.
Wow.
And sure enough, So Niger goes from being an honorable mention player as a junior to being league MVP,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not only league MVP, but first team all CCS his senior year, right? And again, these are the things that happen during Chipotle lunches that I will carry with me for my entire life, and that are things that can encourage others to have that same mindset. And again, those are just incredibly special moments. So.
Wow. Great story.
Yep.
Tell me about your time at Lee. You've had a number of years of success. I think you were there 7 years.
I was, yeah, 7 years. Yep.
And always one of the top public schools. For those of you who are listening that don't really know our area, the public schools are surpassed most of the time by a lot of the private schools in this section. And for the public schools, it's very difficult for them to compete. However, you kind of changed the guard, whereas like, no, we're going to compete. I remember you always scheduled some of the toughest private schools in the area to make sure that, hey, we're on this level. And you definitely got a lot of respect. You know, your teams have been ranked #1 in the section or top 10 in the section for a number of seasons, specifically while you were at Lee. Yeah. Tell me about that process.
And obviously, I mean, so much of what we do is player based, right? So, I mean, I was incredibly blessed, to have some great players and some great talent while I was at Lee. We recognized early on, my first year at Lee, we go 9-16. We lose in the first round of the playoffs. But we saw that we were going to have some real talent coming back, and that really gave me the confidence. And then two, we had an exceptional class of incoming 9th graders from our feeder school, Union Middle School. That's the same feeder middle school that Aaron Gordon went to middle school, and that incoming class had actually broken Aaron Gordon's record for most consecutive wins. They went 40-0 in middle school, and so it's a phenomenal class coming in. And again, as a businessman, you need a mission statement. And so I created a mission statement for Lee and for our basketball program and we made it public. We wanted people to know our goal. And again, based on talent, I wouldn't have been able to say that if we didn't have the talent. But I saw the talent coming in. I saw the work ethic, and then also the confidence that my coaching staff and I had in our abilities as coaches and as motivators. And we set a goal to be one of the best or the best public school in the section. And this incoming group comes in. We start a phenomenal freshman in Connor Peterson. We bring another phenomenal freshman off the bench named Kyle Morrison, who ended up that year being freshman of the year in CCS. We had Connor's older brother, Trevor, who was an unbelievable shooter. We surrounded him with Son Niger, the kid I was telling the story about. And then we had another kid, Devin Patterson, who was an unbelievable athlete, and his motor was off the charts. And so, here we are, a public school, and we're competing. We play Midi that year in a scrimmage, prior to the season starting. It's November, and Aaron Gordon's there. Aaron Gordon's playing. They have an unbelievable team, and they ended up beating us by 1. And in this scrimmage, the gym is packed. Lorenzo Romar at that time was at Washington. He's sitting in the front row. Mind you, it's a scrimmage, Chris. This is early November, and so we set that precedent. We set that tone early. And we instilled a tremendous amount of belief in our kids that we were going to do it. And that year we go 24-5. I believe we were ranked in the top, I think 3 or 4 in the section, I think, or right around that. We ended up losing in the CCS semifinals to St. Francis, who was St. Francis High School is one of the better teams year in and year out in the section. So, and again, what that did is that only gave, I think our whole program confidence, but again, it also set up for a great amount of success because we were returning so many kids as well. So, it was just an unbelievable run. We ended up being one of the top public school teams in the section for 4 years in a row. I was blessed to be CCS Coach of the Year. that year that we had, that my second year at Lee. And it gave me a lot of confidence too, that, that here I am as a still a young coach, that I can do it, and I, again, I'm never going to be Mike Krzyzewski. I'm never going to be Bill Self, but, hey, Patrick Judge can coach. And again, I continue to learn and continue to grow, but having that confidence, like I always say, confidence is king. And my kids had the confidence. My coaching staff and I really started to say, hey, we can do this together we can really succeed. And so it was just a great run. Absolutely loved it at Lee. Again, we had great kids. I had a great AD, a couple of great ADs, great principal early on, great amount of support, just top to bottom. And again, I mean, I had some great coaches, including the Chris McSwain. And you were a part of that. And again, I mean, we were incredibly blessed by, just top to bottom, the kids, the coaching staff, and everything, and really putting Lee basketball, on the map, from a public school perspective. So yeah, it was a ton of fun. And, again, I've got nothing but good memories of the majority of the time that I was at Lee. So
yeah, one of the other compliments that I'll pay you is you allow your assistants to actually coach. So, when we went out and we hit our Chipotle lunch, and, you invited me to come help out and be one of your assistants and your head JV coach, we talked about, allowing me to do the skill development or whatever it may be, so Saturday mornings, it was all me. You didn't even show up, or you would show up, but later, but you would let me do my thing. You would give our input on offensive strategies specifically for me, or Drew for the defensive strategies. And you really listened. There was times where you'd be like, hey, drop a play. And that really helped in my personal development. And the one thing that I always saw you do was allow people to be themselves, particular to your point earlier about, treating everybody as an individual. But you allowed me to coach, you allowed the players to be who they were. And, when I was being coached growing up, I had so many different coaches, a lot of really good coaches that know the game and things like that. They came from a different era in which it was more discipline and more structure. So when I got over to Lee to watch you and work under you, it was much different. You kind of had that Pete Carroll sort of environment where it was not really, I wouldn't say, it's definitely not lazy because you guys always worked hard, but it was just allowing them to be a little bit more free. They were so free in practice, so free off the court. They were the same people that they were on the court as they were off the court. And that was one of the big things that I've definitely taken with me, is I'm trying to allow people to be people and utilize them to their best strengths, not worry about, hey, this kid is kind of, he's a jokester all the time. Well, let him be a jokester, but understand, all right, when we have to do these things, you're going to do them. But other than that, be a jokester. If that means have a joke in practice, do it. If it means have a joke in the locker room, maybe even at your expense, do it, because that's who you are. And I think that's a terrific trait to have. And a lot of coaches, or even business people for that matter, should really take that into consideration when they're dealing with people.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. And again, I think that's one of the things that, when I look at hiring my coaches, that's the conversation that I always have is, I'm hiring you. I don't want my coaches to be yes men. And I don't want them just to, always, I want them to be leaders as well. Right. And so, by allowing, my head assistant coach now, his name's Ben Nevis, who's a phenomenal, he's still young, assistant coach. He does a great job with that. And I think that, again, we all have our own attributes. We all have our own skill set that we can bring to the table. And again, by allowing those assistant coaches to have their own voice, it makes our voice even that much more powerful. Because And again, I don't know everything, and I don't want to know everything. You know, I want my assistant coaches to be great at skill development. I mean, you were incredibly valuable, you know, sitting on the bench with us during our varsity games. I mean, you helped us win games, you know, and Drew McGee as our defensive coordinator helped us win games. You know, I can't do it all on my own. And I think that's one thing that I think a lot of young coaches, they come in and they think, yeah, I've got to do this on my own. You know, I've got to prove myself, you know, and actually, you know, it's great to be able to delegate to other people, hire people that you trust, you know, that you can delegate to, and give them the confidence to be able to. We're all going to make mistakes. They might make a mistake, you know, that's okay. You know, but we're just like our kids, right? Our kids are going to make mistakes. We've got to learn to work through it and can continue to encourage. So that's been a huge lesson for me. I mean, I remember the first year that Ben joined my staff. It was our last year at Lee, and Ben had just finished playing his college career at Lewis and Clark and was a great player. And he's an A personality, you know, like we are. And he wanted to. He was like, you could just see it. Like he wanted to coach and he wanted to be vocal. And at first I was kind of fighting him on it, kind of suppressing him, you know, because he was still a young guy and we needed to channel it the right way. Right. And as Ben and I grew in our trust and our relationship, I continued to give him more and more because he was so incredibly capable. And Ben now flourishes. I mean, he's a phenomenal coach because I've allowed him to flourish. And I think it translates right over to business. You know, is, you know, allowing your staff to flourish, you know, and be free and allowing your kids to be those jokesters. I always draw a big box, right? I think a lot of people as a lot of coaches, they want to put our kids in a little tiny box. Sure. And say, you can't deviate from this, you know, and again, that works really well for some coaches, right? But for me, you know, I like to play in my big box too. And so, you know, the kids, let them be a jokester. Let them, you know, have fun, you know, as long as they stay within the box and the framework of what we're trying to do. Right. I mean, yeah, we run a very kind of loose, free, you know, system. You know, that's always the way I've coached. But, you know, again, if they get outside of that, you know, then they've got to come sit and then we've got to figure it out. But I want kids to be free. I want them to feel as though they're confident, right, in their abilities, because again, I think that it translates over to them as young men and continuing down their path. So
sure. Now you've been at Saratoga, I believe it's 3 years now. So that's been a different transition and trying to build the program and build the culture there. Briefly talk about that so we can get on to the tech talk.
Yeah. Oh, tech talk. Okay. I like that. So yeah, Saratoga, I mean, you know, I left Lee and, you know, I received a phone call from what now is my good friend and Tim Lugo, who's our AD at Saratoga, and he said, Pat, he goes, how's your passion? How's your fire? You know, and obviously I think you guys are starting to understand that, you know, that my answer was you know, it's good, Tim. And he goes, well, he goes, you know, our varsity basketball coach, Trevor Noss, just left to take another opportunity at Los Altos High School, you know, and we're looking for a coach. And he goes, if your fire's still lit, we'd love to have you come in. And so came in, interviewed our principal. We're sitting in an interview, and our principal, who again I don't know, and he goes, hey Pat, he goes, here's what I want you to do. This is really the key to our interview. He goes, 5 seconds left on the clock, your ball, down 2. I need you to draw me up an inbounds play that's going to get us a 3, that's going to win us the game. And he goes, and get up on the board right now and do it. Okay. First of all, that was my principle, right? And it's a huge lesson for, I think, any coaches. That's the kind of support and that's the kind of principle that we all pray for, right? We need and want that support. So get a job on the board. And he questions me on the play call. He goes, no, that's not going to work. Defense is going to go here. And I was like, no. We're going to get this shot. And we ended up having a discussion about plays and basketball. an hour later, I get a phone call and they say, Pat, you're our guy. How quickly can you get back to Saratoga? We want to introduce you tonight to the kids, and we need you to go to St. Mary's team camp this weekend because we're already scheduled. And here I am. I literally was at the gym, turned back around. I'm wearing an orange shirt, which I learned is a no-no at Saratoga because our rival is Los Gatos, who's orange and black.
Yep.
So I walk in. Obviously, I'm already like a strike against me. That's okay. And so we get going. We go play team camp. I think we lose every game except for one in team camp because we're trying to play fast. We're throwing the ball away. I think we turn the ball over 35 times a game, each game that we play in team camp. I'm thinking to myself, like, good Lord, what did I get myself into? First year, we ended up going to the CCS finals, which had never been done in the history of Saratoga High School. Ended up going to NorCal's. Unbelievable first year at Saratoga. And again, it's just been an absolute blessing. I mean, the support from principal, AD, coaching staff, parents. I've got phenomenal kids, and it's been a change, but it's been just an incredibly positive change. And again, I've got phenomenal kids that work their tail off every day. I mean, our team GPA, average team GPA at Saratoga for the last 3 years has been a 3.5. And I mean,
and that's the true measure of success, honestly.
It really is. It really is. I mean, I am so incredibly proud of the effort that my kids give. I mean, I have a kid right now, double major in comp sci and business at Wharton. I've got kids at Cal. I've got kids at Duke. I've got a kid that had to miss the last couple of weeks of summer basketball because he was working with a doctorate program down at UCLA to create skills for Alexa. I mean,
impressive.
I have a freshman right now that just won a hackathon sponsored by Google down at UCLA. I mean, these are unbelievable kids. And then to ask them to go 120, when they step foot in the gym after all of the other things that they're doing, because again, basketball for them is not the end game. It's going to a great college. It's going to be successful in life. And again, I just get to, I'm incredibly blessed to share in that experience. So yeah, so Saratoga has been, unbelievable. And I continue to learn and grow, and I become more flexible. They always tell me that, I'm going to become less and less flexible as I get older. Well, I think as a coach, I'm becoming more and more flexible and understanding how to adjust to, hey, coach, I've got to go to SAT prep class. I've got to miss the last half hour of practice. At Lee, I would have said, no. You're not going to go, or you're going to be late.
Sure.
At Saratoga, go. And again, it's been really good for me. It's been great for my kids too, and the communication aspect of it. And then again, I've been blessed with a great staff as well, that they work their tail off. They're all in. And again, I mean, I couldn't be more thankful. So.
Awesome. Well, let's pivot right now. We're going to talk a little bit of hoops. I know we've been talking about business. We've been talking about team dynamics, that sort of stuff, but this is somewhat of a basketball podcast as well. So I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the technical, tactical things with basketball. I first want to talk about the relationship piece that you have with officiating or officials.
Yep.
And I also want to talk about the relationships with other coaches,
Yep.
not just in the league, but as a community. Talk about those two things.
Well, I think, it's funny. I was just talking to another coach, a young coach, about this last week about officials. When I first got into it, again, that fiery, competitive, nature of mine, it definitely did not ingratiate myself with officials. Mm-hmm. And, I I would yell and scream. I would slam my clipboard. I was that guy. And again, not directed at my kids, but at the officials. And I remember very clearly there was a AAU tournament that I played in. I had brought a number of my high school kids, and this was when I was at Santa Teresa, and I stood up to argue a call like 2 minutes in, and it was the first thing I had said to the official. As soon as I stood up, I didn't even get a full sentence out, and he teased me up. And again, it was my already reputation of being, of being too fiery. And so, but that was my immaturity, and so as I've gotten older, and the biggest thing I could say about to young coaches is yelling and screaming at officials. It doesn't make you a better coach, and, I know we all see it on TV, and I know that's what sometimes makes, ESPN, when a coach just loses his mind, and we're all competitive and we've all been there, but yelling and screaming does not make you a better coach. And so I've learned that with referees, we're all human beings, and there are so many good referees that are even better men, and women that are out there refereeing. And so, one of my goals, and again, I'm not perfect, I'm not 100%, but one of my goals is to treat the referees as human beings. And I think that when we take that perspective, because if we're yelling and screaming, I don't care who it is, a referee, your wife, your girlfriend, a kid, whoever it is, they're going to turn you off, or they're going to take a negative, they're going to look, I'm not giving him a call. No way. This guy's yelled at me all game.
Right.
Now he wants a call. So again, taking the human aspect of it, understanding that, treating him with respect. And again, I still yell, I still get fired up, but it's in a different way. And the other analogy I use as I'm teaching, I have a young coach, my JV coach, that's fired up, and he sometimes loses his mind a little bit, and I've got to rein him in.
I think that coach works for Top Flight too, right? He does.
And I love him. And he had actually one of the best seasons. A shout out to Devin Sutherland.
Yeah.
But they had one of the best JV seasons that Saratoga has ever had this year. And he did a phenomenal job. And when he's the best coach is when he's not talking to the referees. And, and we've talked a lot of times about that. And he's a damn good coach when he's not worried about the refs. And it's amazing how his team responds when he's not worried about the refs. And so I've talked to Devin a lot of times about, it's like a fight. It's like a fight that you don't really want to fight the guy, right? Is you get in and you throw a punch and you get away, right? And that's kind of what it is with referees too, is make your point, ask your question, get a response, and then move on, right? And so, because again, if you make your point, you ask your question, no matter what response you get, you're not going to change it. And so it's like throw your punch and then move on, And so, but again, I think that the relationship with the referees, I really truly have a lot of friends in this business as referees that actually are excited to referee my games now. And I truly appreciate that, because again, we're all working towards the same goal, is having an impact on the lives of kids. So,
right.
Yeah.
Talk about your relationship with other coaches in the area, and how you guys are using each other to better your profession.
Yeah, we're really truly, and I say this with in all sincerity, we're incredibly fortunate with the amount of really good coaches, in this area. And I'm not just talking about X's and O's, but I'm talking about really good guys, really good guys, really good women, that have the right heart for kids. And so, my relationship with the coaches, is really, really positive. And again, I can't believe I'm saying this at age 45. I still feel like I'm a young coach, but I'm now kind of one of the older coaches, and so, it's really given me an opportunity to encourage other coaches, and be hopefully what is looked upon as a leader, in the coaching community, coaching the right way, having my teams play the right way. Those are all really important. And also being a resource, being around so long as coaches will reach out and say, hey, I'm looking for a game. Can you help me out? Or I'm looking for, someone to provide us with uniforms. Can you help me out? I mean, whatever it is, I really, that I take a lot of joy in that. And so, again, I mean, there just truly are. There's so many good coaches. I mean, I think a lot of times, the private school coaches, they get a lot of pub because they have such great teams, and you're one of those coaches now. I mean, so, and those guys are great guys and great coaches, but I think there's so many good public school coaches that work just as hard, that have great relationships and that, are doing it the right way. And again, I have a tremendous amount of respect for anybody who's showing up every night, giving it their all, and having an impact on the lives of young men and young women. I mean, my hat goes off to them, and I have a ton of respect for, our profession as a whole. When our heart is in the right place and our focus is, because wins and losses, we're going to go through ups and downs as coaches, right? But the thing that I think can stay consistent is the fact that, our attitude, our mission, our goal should always be having a positive impact, and helping kids. Because again, how many kids are going to go D1? How many kids are going to play college level basketball or move on further than that? Not many, so, but again, I sincerely, from a referees, from a coach and staff perspective, I have a ton of respect for the people that I have relationships throughout the Bay Area.
Right. And talk a little bit, I think, we're going to have to do a part 2 for sure, because I want to get more into some of the basketball schematics, but you've been able to be in so many different areas or fill so many buckets. You're filling your basketball bucket, your business bucket, your family bucket. What are the other buckets that you have in your life? And, how are you managing all those things?
Not many other buckets, Chris. I mean, there's not a lot. No, I mean, again, I mean, putting coaching as a top priority, it's very challenging. I mean, family is a bucket. Relationships are a bucket. Working out and staying healthy is definitely a bucket. And again too, I mean, getting just laying by the pool, working on my tan or lack thereof. I mean, just that, I took up, I'm going to sound like an old guy, but, my buddy and I started playing ping pong, after our workouts at the gym. Yeah. I mean, just little things that bring a little bit of joy, that help you take your mind off of, everything else you've got going on. Whether it's reading a book or taking a little, weekend getaway, whatever it is. But, yeah, I mean, I just, I truly, again, I hate to sound cliche, but it truly is. I'm incredibly blessed in my life. And, again, with my family, with friends, relationships, with my kids, and with my job, I'm happy, and again, I think a lot of it comes from that passion that I have for coaching, and God opening those doors for me. So, yeah, again, I don't have many other buckets to fill. People are like, what else do you do besides coaching? It's like, well, I coach 10 months out of the year. Yeah. I mean, I guess, when I'm not coaching, I mean, I get to barbecue. I don't know. I mean, but it's my passion. I mean, right now, like my phone, goes off about every 5 minutes. We're doing this huge, challenge with my program, this fitness and skill development and, calorie intake, challenge with my kids. And so, yeah, I mean, even if I'm not in the gym, I'm still coaching and trying to be the best leader I can be. So.
Beautiful. Well, you've got such a great story. You share a lot of content online with your social media and stuff like that. How can everybody follow you?
You know what? Actually, you know what? I need to be better about that because I'm not great at social media, but thank you. I need to get better at it. They can, people can reach out to me through email. Again, Chris, I'm old, man. I'm old school. But I think my Instagram handle is at the Coach PJ. Okay, so I think it is. Again, I really need to get better at my social media presence.
I'll look it up and make sure we put it in.
I appreciate that. And in fact, I know you had Dallas Jensen on. Or going to have him on the podcast as well. He does a phenomenal job with that, and I need to take tips from him on how to be more social media presence. I mean, I'm a real estate agent. I manage a real estate office now. Yeah. I need to be better at it. I'm the first one to admit it. So maybe you could even help me with that, Chris. But no, I mean, people can definitely reach out. And I'd love to come back and do it again and talk more X's and O's and and that. But again, man, it's an honor. It's an honor to be to do this with you. And again, I mean, I think back to our relationship. When you were a 16-year-old kid and where you are today. I mean, it's super awesome. It does make me feel old, but I love you. I love everything that you stand for. What Top Flight stands for. What you stand for as a man, as a coach, and I love this. I love this forum to be able to reach out to others that have the same passion. So.
Definitely. Well, I know a lot of people are going to be reaching out to you. We appreciate your time, and just keep up with the passion and energy. And for anybody that's out there listening, if you've got those two things, passion and energy, it's going to transcend, and you are going to be successful if you bring those two things every day. So thank you guys for listening, and Coach, we'll touch base soon and definitely talk some more X's and O's.
There we go. Sounds good, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.